866-957-2874. Stacy on the right with Stacy Washington on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
Oh, yeah. We have some very fun things going on here at SiriusXM's Patriot Channel. So let's jump in here. I'm so glad to welcome back to the show Alleigh Marré. She is joining us from American Parents Coalition Executive Director. That's where she's American Parents Coalition. She's Executive Director there at USA Parent on X.com. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. You have a little bit of a update for us here. This week, the American Parents Coalition is calling on the YMCA president and CEO and board of directors on a very specific topic. Tell us what you guys are asking for.
Sure. So we started this investigation with the YMCA about a year ago. Long story short, that started when we noticed a series of media reports with various women across the country complaining about how men and boys were allowed into private spaces like locker rooms and bathrooms, were changing their clothes, exposing themselves. And in almost all of those cases, it was the women who were reprimanded for complaining and voicing concerns about adult men in those public spaces, in many cases with young girls present. And so this has been a year-plus long investigation that we've done. We've called on them, of course, to change those policies. We've linked their, federal funding back to the government. They get $600 million plus a year in federal funding. And so this year, just last week, there was, of course, the Supreme Court ruling in which affirmed that Title IX does, in fact, do what most of us have been crying for years, which is protect sports and spaces for women and girls based on biological sex. So after that ruling, we sent a letter to the YMCA, their leadership, and said, hey, look, the Supreme Court has reaffirmed the intent of Title IX to protect girls' sports based on sex. And that applies across the board to organizations receiving federal funding. So that's a letter we sent this week, and we are continuing our charge and our investigation to try and get the YMCA to change its policies and be in compliance with federal law.
So it's a little weird to hear you having to go through all of this rigmarole with the YMCA. YMCA is supposed to be a Christian organization.
It is, and if you look at, their website, or if you happen upon your local YMCA campus, you'll find signs about Christian values and the like. But unfortunately, that seems to have changed. And of course, the point that we keep drawing here is the YMCA is not, Planet Fitness or Gold's Gym. They are in receipt of hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funding. So there is actually a avenue for there to be enforcement here, whereas with, some of those private organizations operating in states like, Minnesota or Oregon, where the states have, quote, protections for those spaces based on gender identity, that does not apply for the YMCA, which is in receipt of federal funds. They do not have the option on whether or not they choose to comply with Title IX because they receive federal taxpayer money.
So then this has to percolate up through the courts, or is there just an immediate you comply or we take away your federal money?
So that's what we're trying to tease out right now. Last year, we sent a letter to the three departments that are responsible for the majority of that funding, which is HHS, HUD, and the Department of Education. We have heard back from one of those agencies about the funding for the YMCA, and I don't want to publicly get ahead of how those conversations are going. But I am encouraged that we have heard from the administration on, from one of those agencies. And I know that this is a priority of President Trump and, something that he took action on within his first week via executive orders to protect women's sports. So I'm hopeful that we're able to see some actual recourse and enforcement from the government with that funding, and that's what we're working toward.
All right. So what do you recommend to families who, I just remember when my kids were smaller, thank God they're not that age now, they went to YMCA summer camp and they went to sleepaway camp. We were very comfortable with them being at the YMCA, and, we would go to the gym. I mean, we had a membership back then. It was just it was just like an extension of any other place we would go to where we felt like they were safe. What are you recommending to parents to do right now while this is going on?
Yeah, so parents need to have, if you have your kids enrolled in any sort of YMCA program, or if you just put them, in their child watch while you go and work out, you need to have an understanding not just on their, bathroom policies broadly, but what are their bathroom, locker room, and housing accommodation policies based on sex, not just gender. And in many places across the country, and this is primarily in the, quote, blue states, but in many places where there are these sleepaway camps like Oregon, Minnesota, Wisconsin, not only are they allowing housing for the campers based on, quote, gender identity, so, boys would be able to bunk with girls in these, quote, girls plus cabins, but this is extending to their staff as well. So you could have a adult male counselor who calls himself a female bunking in a cabin full of 8 to 10-year-old girls. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that puts kids at risk, not just from a safety perspective, but privacy, changing their clothes. It's just completely inappropriate. And I think majority of parents agree on something like that. So make sure that you're asking thorough questions, that you're talking to other parents who might share your concerns, and make sure that you're voicing those to your local YMCA chapter if they have these policies, because of course, what we're doing, for example, and I know there's other organizations who of course are following this as well, it takes time on the government or legislative side, but if you're aware of it, there's a lot you can do within your community at home while the policy side takes some time to catch up.
So advocating and standing up for the right of women and children to just to be able to do the things we've been able to do since the passage of Title IX, which is have unique changing facilities and I'm really surprised that the YMCA is on this side of this, because it's so easy to just say, we're not going to weigh in. We're not going to be a part of, the one side or the other. We're going to keep our policies the same because that's the expectation of our members. And anyone who wants a different option will have to find that at another pool or another gym or what have you. That's the easiest way. It's just to say, we're not changing anything. We appreciate your interest in this, but we're just not going to be making any changes. We have families here.
Yeah, and they've tried to play it cute. For the past year, when we've been posting some of these reports and investigations, essentially what they do is they just erase the webpage as if things on the internet don't exist forever once they've been seen. So they just take down the website, pretend it didn't exist, and say something along the lines of, our policies vary from state to state, and each branch sets their own policy. But what they continue to neglect to address is that would be the legally okay response from a Gold's Gym or a Planet Fitness operating in one of these states, but it is not when you are accepting federal funds. So yes, to your point, it should be something along the line. And even, if they wanted to, quote, blame their policy and have like an out, we accept federal funds. This is federal law. We are bound to these obligations. That's it. And that would preserve these private spaces for women and girls. It would keep them in compliance with Title IX. It would ensure that they could continue to receive federal funding because they're in compliance with the law. But by trying to play both sides of the coin here and placate the activist class on the far left, while then also publicly trying to maintain that they're a Christian organization, they've really put themselves voluntarily and by their own missteps in a very, very tenuous position.
Well, as usual, I hate to say it this way, but it's just the truth. If you have children, it's really your responsibility to know what the policies are. And I think it's pretty dastardly, because what ends up happening is parents are in a hurry and they're scheduling and they're doing, and they're trying to get more kids to more different activities. So you have more than one child, more than one stream of activities to, basically get them to. And so you're taking them and you're signing them up and you're dropping them off. And it doesn't occur to you that there may be grown men using the YMCA who will then go into the female changing facilities or the facilities that are, being used during summer camp. They usually set off a bathroom that's being used by the campers, and that won't be sacrosanct anymore. Or that they could be bunking with men or boys who are not their same age, instead of just 5-year-olds all in it might be 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 15-year-olds and your smaller kid, and mixed sex facilities.
Yeah, and they also very much take advantage of the fact that there is the generational reputation. I mean, I know just myself, I grew up spending, honestly, 15 to 20 hours a week at the Y. Like I would not have played college sports if not for the hours I put in at the basketball courts at my local YMCA. I mean, I loved and lived at the YMCA. And so this one hit particularly close to home for me because I had that same vision and trust for my kids when they started getting to the age where I was ready to enroll them, in soccer and karate and maybe a summer camp here and there, and then did my research and started seeing all of this and was like, what on earth is going on? This is not the YMCA I grew up with. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge for parents right now, which is exactly what you just touched on, is we cannot transfer the institutional trust from the organizations or doctors or whatever that we grew up with just based on reputation. Like everything that you do as a family, you have to look at with a 2026 lens and start from the bottom and research it all over again as if you've never heard of these organizations, because they've capitalized on their reputation and their goodwill and completely changed. Something
is different, and it certainly isn't the parents and it's not the kids, it's these policies. And you mentioned advocating at the local level, going to the basically going to them and saying, listen, it's the policy that you have going on for bathrooms here isn't family friendly. And I don't know how many people you have here who want to have gender-free bathrooms, but there are certainly a lot of families coming here, and I don't think they're aware of what's going on. I'd really love it if you'd go back to the family-friendly policy. Or we have to move to a place, for swimming lessons or whatever it is that you're doing. And it's annoying, but you have to do it. You have to do it.
You have to do it, and you have to try and take some other families and friends with you. And I know no one wants to be the squeaky wheel, but there are often, when you start having these conversations in your social circles, there are often more people who agree with you than you think, and no one wants to be the first one to speak up. And I've found that firsthand, that when, no one wants to be the one, especially when you're talking about stuff with kids, no one wants to be the one who's canceled or who, all of a sudden your family gets that reputation and you don't want to have that apply to your kids. So like, I totally get that. But that's why it's equally important to be having those conversations with friends and neighbors, because there is strength in numbers. And it also makes you feel like and be less of an outlier when you can go to the Y or your school board or what sports league, whatever it is, and say, hey, there's 3 3 families, 15 families, whatever, and that's 25 kids who are all uncomfortable with this policy, whose rights are being violated under Title IX. Our girls are not being given a fair shot in this field hockey league, in this basketball league, not to mention their privacy and their safety. And there is strength in numbers. And, especially in cases like the Y, you vote with your dollars, you cancel your membership and you go somewhere else.
Yeah, but I have to make a point here. One of the things that we have that's going on is people are worried about, you said, being canceled or being seen as that kind of a family. That really can't be your concern if the option is your child sees a man naked or your daughter is subject to possibly, sexual assault. And the other part about it is we have another guest who comes on. His name is Alvin Louie, and he runs Courage is a Habit. And you really have to kind of cut your teeth on this idea that sometimes standing up for what's right is going to, other people might call you names, but that's not your problem. Them name calling you or canceling you, so to speak, would you rather be canceled or would you rather have a child who's been subjected to a sexual assault? I mean, these are easy decisions. Just stand up. And if you want to have safety in numbers and take people with you, awesome. That's a good thing to do because the YMCA is very sensitive to that. They have to compete with newer facilities. Most YMCAs are not nearly as large or fancy as a Lifetime Fitness. And so they really have to fight to keep members. And they love their families because families are much more likely to join a YMCA, families with young kids, than they are a Lifetime Fitness. So they have that family connection is their built-in selling point, and you have to capitalize on that. And don't worry about it. So someone says something mean about you. Okay. This is going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, and what better way to show your kids how to respectfully care about an issue, to show them that you care about them and their safety and that you take your primary responsibility as a parent, which is to keep them safe and, protected from the dangers of the world, than to have those conversations on their behalf. So I completely agree with you on that. And it is incumbent upon us as parents to do those, hard things, which for some people is hard, to do those hard things and stand up for our kids, because no one else is going to do it for you. And you will be totally steamrolled by the institutions and the machine if you don't speak up.
Yep. Steamrolling is, that's something they can do, but we can do it back. There are far more parents than in pretty much any other group. Parents are the number one interest group. So, kind of keep that in mind. And remember, you have email, you have text threads, you're on text groups. Just go for it. Let everybody know. They got men and the girls changing facilities right now. How many men? I don't know specifically, but that's the ruling is any man can enter. What are we going to do about this? And you'll see people kind of rising up to the occasion saying, oh, wow, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. So we do have some power and we need to use it. It's so good to have you back. Any last thoughts? It's good to have you, Alleigh.
Thank you. Last thing I would say is just on this, I always give a plea to the dads on this one. We have so much organizational backbone from our moms and the quote mama bears, but I know that sports especially, a lot of that falls into the quote dad portfolio, like taking the kids to baseball practice and stuff. And it is incumbent upon our dads to really be the protectors of the family and not let this fall by the wayside. And, it is really your responsibility to step forward and protect your daughters and the daughters of your friends. So if there's an opportunity for you as a dad to be involved in this and speak out, I would really encourage you to do that because, we just don't hear enough from the dads.
Come on, dads. We know you're working, but if you got time to get in a round of golf, you got time to make a quick stop by the YMCA on your way to the links or on your way back. Just stop in and let them know. You know what's not going to be happening? Grown men changing with my 9-year-old. So change your policy or you'll be saying goodbye to our family and everyone that we know who's on our little email chain, because we have quite a few friends and we all love the YMCA, but we will stop loving it if you don't come to your senses. They will change their policy so quick because they don't want to see, 10, 15, 100 families leaving. That could devastate them financially. And as much government money as they get, they still have to keep the doors open. They still have to pay their bills. So it's a good point. The men are usually the most impactful when it comes to these kinds of stands. Alleigh, we're so glad that you could join us, and the work that you're doing over at the American Parents Coalition. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful